Cheers for joining us. I know a lot of people are live on LinkedIn. The majority of people aren't joining on Riverside, but yeah, we'll get right into it. Quick heads up: we're assuming here that everyone here already runs or understands influencer and paid social to like some extent. There's a lot of information out there on how to start, but I always say this: there's a massive lack of information on how you really go from like 1 to 2, 1 to 3, past that 0 to 1 mark, and that's really what we want to unlock for you here today. I'm really excited about this one in particular. Nat, I know we've worked together for a while. We swap notes regularly, but we're never really like sat down properly and
Yeah,
discussed what we're seeing in the space in depth. So I'm expecting that to be really valuable. With that in mind, do you want to just like quickly introduce yourself for those that don't know you, and I'll do the same.
sure. So my name's Nativ. I'm the founder of an agency called NSY. We build performance creative for 7 to 9 figure health and wellness ecom brands across the UK and the US. And we're built for performance. So it's not really like a branding agency. It's a performance creative agency to be
Right.
able to scale with meta ads.
Sweet, nice. And if we've not met before, founder of Augmentum Media, we're an influencer marketing agency specializing in health, wellness, and personal care. We've got a really large emphasis on influencer creative for Meta across our programs, and so that's really what I'm excited to dig into today. Working with brands like Lululemon, Nestle, Huel, AG1, etc. on their influencer programs. Now, the structure for today is simple. We don't really do boring slide decks here. Instead, what I've done is I've written down a few questions which I think are going to be really useful to just pick your brain on. It's stuff that, honestly, Nat, I really want to know and learn from you. And then I've got a
Yeah.
couple of questions I've actually asked my clients about, some questions directly from brands that's going to allow us to keep things super actionable, and we'll just riff from there.
Sounds good.
So, just to jump into it then, everyone says they need more creative, but just set the base for me. Why do so many brands still struggle to produce enough creative to scale paid social properly?
Yeah, so like obviously with this new Andromeda update, everyone is asking for creative. Like all of the clients asking for more creative, more volume. And I think the reason why people can't do it is, I think the first thing is like it's a systems issue. It's not systemized, and we'll get deeper into what that means. And I think because it's not systemized, it leads to two problems. The problem number one is a cost problem. So the cost to make 5 ads, the price per ad is the same as the cost to make 100. There's no economies of scale involved here. Let's say to make 5 ads, it costs $100 per ad. When they make 100 ads, it's still the same amount. And obviously, that's not very scalable. And you need to be finding leverage points as you get to scale. It's kind of like when you are, like, let's say you're buying stock and you're buying at a higher MOQ, your cost per unit goes down. You need to kind of think of that same thought process with kind of content. And again, that is a systems problem. So that's problem number one. It's cost. Problem number two is you can't scale. Your team gets spread very thin because it's not systemized. Every piece of content is starting from like level zero. You're reaching out to creators. You're doing everything manually. So to try to scale that, it's expensive. And again, you just don't have the bandwidth in house, and you have to hire more people, which then just raise the cost even more, and just makes you less profitable as well.
Sweet, makes sense. So it's a bit of an economy of scale problem, is that like you need more creative, but it continues to cost the same amount, and your incremental
Yeah.
performance on Meta doesn't scale the same way. So, just in your experience, I know you've worked with a variety of different brands. Where do we hit that mark? Like, what sort of size of brand, what sort of, whether that's like employee number, Meta spend per month, are people falling into that, like, how do we scale problem?
I actually think it's across the board, even when brands are starting. Like people, it's kind of like that Alex Hormozy quote. Like you don't even like you can always do more volume, even when you're starting out. The more volume you can do with your ads, the quicker the learnings and the quicker your scale. So I've seen it across the board, but there is really like solidified ceiling I see when brands are spending around like 50k a month. They think what got them to 50k a month is going to get them to 500k, a million a month in ad spend. Like the kind of volume, the sheer volume of creative you need to get to that level. And again, we can go much deeper into the actual tactics behind that. People really underestimate it. So I would say it's across the board, but really 50k a month spend and above, that's where like the big problems happen. And like it's like a constant cycle of not being able to scale. That's kind of what I found.
Makes sense. And this is, I'm hearing as well, like even important now with Andromeda. Just demystify Andromeda for me. What is it? How does it work? Why is creative scale and creative diversity, I know, like even more important?
Yeah, exactly. So to understand this, we need to understand Meta's incentives, right? How to make Meta make money. Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, they make money by people staying on the platform longer. Why do they want people to stay on the platform longer? Because they get served more ads. The more ads you serve, the more people will basically pay, and that's how they make money. So we need to think from what Meta wants. And what Andromeda is basically telling us is we can really increase the volume of creative because AI now. And I would actually say like Andromeda is somewhat of like a protection mechanism against AI slop. And like the same because if someone's seeing the same thing all the time, it's not entertaining and people are going to leave. So what does that mean for advertisers? It means creative volume and creative diversity. And I think creative diversity is a thing that people really struggle with because anyone can make a lot of ads, but it's like, how do you really get high quality ads in the account? And I would say, first of all, look at the avatar. So who are you targeting? Are you targeting a menopausal woman that's 60 or a kind of a Gen Z girl? Those are two different avatars, and Meta will see that as kind of very diverse ads and serve it to different audiences. You can then have the messaging. So what is the angle? We can be speaking to the same avatar, which is menopausal women, but one of them we could be speaking about high cortisol, which happens during the menopausal time, and then another one could be bad sleep. That's a different angle. Another one is the creator, and again, this is where Sambhav really shines. It's how can the creators and the visual side of things feed diversity into the account. There's obviously a lot more which we can go into deeper, but Andromeda basically is make lots of ads that look very different, that serve different audiences, and Meta kind of rewards that with CPM, and you'll obviously get better incremental reach as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting because the chat that I have really regularly now, especially with a lot of our kind of like larger 8 figure, early 9 figure brands, a lot of the brands that are kind of like still reaching slash are in that scale up phase, is around creative volume, and often having chats about why influencer content is such an effective way to solve it. Like for us, it really comes down to trying to solve two problems at once, which is volume, as you say, but then also authenticity. To your point around creative diversity, we always look at creator diversity being upstream, sorry, from creative diversity, i.e., if you are one person, one creative strategist, there is a limit to how many new angles you can think of, how many new ads you can create. You have an army of different creators with different backgrounds, with different stories, creating that content for you. You essentially, I guess, manufacture that engine of creative diversity because they're going to think and create angles that kind of you can't think of yourselves. And so that's what's allowing brands at the moment across our programs to really like build a regular flow of new concepts without their creative strategists being just kind of completely overwhelmed.
And how do you convey that with these creators, like, or is it more the selection of the creators that feed the diversity?
Yeah, it's twofold for sure. It's uh, and this is a touchy topic for a lot of brands, but ensuring that their influencer base, their creator base, does come from like a diverse array of backgrounds. That is not
Mm.
just something that you do in the name of diversity. That is something that links really, really heavily into performance as well. If you have creators from different backgrounds with different stories, they're going to fundamentally have different experiences with the product, and that's what's going to allow you to speak to different angles and solve that kind of incremental reach problem that you talk about. But the second, I think, is also in that kind of like briefing and communication stage. I know far too many brands and agencies that are far too strict, far too heavy on briefing, and it's a really kind of drawn out conversation in the influencer sphere, but giving a bit more of a prompt or having a bit of a conversational brief and then allowing the creator to lean on their personal experience is second to none in terms of creative diversity rather than giving them a script or giving them kind of a really tight brief. So you nail
Yeah.
those two, you nail the number of diverse creators you have in your, I guess, database, if we want to call it that way, or roster, and you nail have giving them enough guidance of a brief but not it being super strict that they all create the same content, and that's where it kind of really multiplies.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. So like it's getting that diverse creative from the like the seeding process. One big thing that we've found, and to be honest, a lot of clients ask me is like, okay, we've got this like influencer content. These creators are posting organically. A lot of brands generate that content, but I see, and a lot of brands always ask me, how do I turn this into like a repeatable paid system? Like, how do I transfer the learnings from organic and move it to paid and it actually performs at scale? Like, what does that pipeline actually look like on your guys' end?
Yeah, really good question. So I think fundamentally you first need to understand the different types of content that you should expect to get from creators at various stages of your relationship with them, and it really is that relationship. I think a lot of it in the terms of relationship enough, but understanding that like a creator's just received your product for the first time, you've given them no briefing, you've just quote unquote seeded them with product, that is not going to be your like highly produced kind of like bang on the brief ad. That is more likely to be very raw, very authentic, probably can't talk to the benefits very much if the product requires kind of in supplements, let's say 30 to 60 days to see the benefits, and is more than likely going to be really good b-roll content. You then proceed them through into like, let's say, an ambassador program or onto a low cost retainer, or work with them on content in a more hands-on manner. That's when you go further along that spectrum into kind of more and more produced, ready to go ad right into the ad account. And there's always, I guess, like stages within that where you've got a content that you think maybe I don't put it in straight away, but maybe I chop it into three different pieces and mesh it with other creator ads, versus a piece of content that you're like, look, this is ready to go on a billboard, this is ready to go on a YouTube campaign, let's say. So yeah, I think it's just about really understanding different stages of your relationship with your creators and what stage you expect to get different types of content, and then building the repeatable system to make that happen. So across a lot of our kind of like creative focus programs, that's seeding at scale, getting that really raw content, building relationships with those creators, working out who genuinely loves the product because they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to create the most authentic content longer term, and then funneling those through into either an ambassador program, which is kind of a bit more affiliate led for ongoing product, or a low cost retainer. They create more briefed content, but again, to my point, relatively like storytelling based and with relatively loose briefs, and that's the engine that you want to build. That's when you can layer. I'm sure we'll talk about whitelisting and partnership ads as well.
Yeah, yeah. So one little question on that, like for me even personally, is like you have like this three-tier system, right? You seed them, and then you build like affiliate programs, and then you kind of get them on whitelisting to scriptwrite. How do you know like when someone's worth like moving through the system? So like if like they make great content in that like first phase, how do you know to then bring them over into the next two phases and then get them into like that, like where they're ready to put in the ad account and scale?
Yeah, really good question. This is all very tactical, but you're essentially looking for what we internally call signals, which is there's a number of different kind of signals or triggers here, but have they given us really good feedback of the product? Have they gone out of their way to send us a voice note on Instagram about how much they're really enjoying it? Have they created really good content organically? Have they told friends about it? What we're ideally indexing for is creators that we know of the product and can create good content, which you either monitor through their Instagram feed or their TikTok feed, or you monitor through content that they create specifically for your brand unprompted. Even still, what works well organically doesn't necessarily work well on paid. I think that's a really important distinction to make, because organically you have a level of context, or audiences have a level of context that you don't have on paid. And so we'll always try and dip our toe in the water with creators in a paid capacity, even after any sort of like seeding and affiliate relationship, which is one video or two video test. If we're just using the content from a paid capacity, we're not looking just at has the ad performed, has the ad spent, but also can we communicate with them well? Do they hit the deadline? Did they follow the brief? And if so, then they might get kind of that second, third, or like ongoing retainer chance, even if that initial ad didn't quite hit.
Yeah, that's actually a good thought process. Like if there's potential there, you can build, because like it's like with anything in the first round, everyone's trying to learn about the brand, learn about what works, what doesn't. But if there's that potential, you can scale into that. Again, I know I listened to a podcast with founders of comfort clothing, and he mentioned something very similar to that. Like he really builds deep relationships with these creators, and the deeper the relationship is, the more they're bought in with the brand ethos and the brand vision. They make better content, which obviously turns out in the meta ad results.
Yeah, the
So yeah.
community manager, the like creator manager is one of the most underutilized role in my opinion across most meta programs. The value of building that relationship, the value of kind of going really deep and chatting to them on the phone, for example, like I was doing with creators just yesterday, makes such a big impact on the quality of content, but also the quality of communication. And ultimately, you're going to be working with them long term in an ideal.
Yeah, okay, so that's an important hire. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And now it's like, okay, we've done this process around seeding. We've found some creators. Another big question is like, okay, we've got this content. How the hell do we test it inside the ads manager? Um, and this is like, you need to be very methodical around this, because you can waste budget and almost learn nothing. Um, One of the really big benefits of having more creative volume is that you kind of 3x your learnings as well. And like feedback loops to a great creative strategist is like one of the most valuable things. You want to just be giving feedback loop after feedback loop for your creative strategist. So here's how like I think about tangibly testing these organic content and bring it over to meta. So first thing you need to do is you need to define the content. So let's say we get a piece of content from a creator. We need to understand who the avatar is. So again, who are they speaking to? What is the angle in that ad? So are they talking about, again, menopause, etc.? And then you also want to like name it if they have whitelisting or not. So now in the ad account, you're like whitelisting ad from this creator targeting this avatar with this angle. And if that ad does very well, you can see like literally from an ad account standpoint in your ad set, depending how you're testing it, you can be like, oh, this ad is working very well. Let's do a few things. Here's how we iterate on it. Number one is you scale that ad obviously in the ad account. But number two is like, okay, what are the variables in this ad that has made it perform? We know that this angle works, so let's kind of scale into that angle, make more ads around that angle. We see this avatar works, so how can we target this same avatar with different angles? Or like an iteration that we found work very well is like, let's say this specific creator works well with this specific messaging. We will literally just find one of our other affiliate creators and tell them to do this exact same script, but then they are saying it. So literally just swapping out the creator. And I think this really unlocks the actual volume aspect of it, because again, you're testing all these things, you're learning, and you can make, I would say, 5-6 iterations for every one ad. So if you're bringing in 100 ads, you've got like 100 or 600 little variations there. Again, maybe that's not all of them have all the variations, but it's really a way to learn much quicker. And that's why at the beginning of this, I mentioned creative volume. You need creative volume even when you're a smaller brand, because it will just accelerate your learnings like crazy. And as mentioned, with a good creative strategist, plus all the learnings they've got, you can find winners very, very quickly.
Question for you there. You know this, but we've got a couple of brands who have scaled incredibly quickly in their first and second years through essentially Meta plus influencer as their like
Uh,
core advertising stack, and the sorts of volume that these guys are doing. I'm thinking of two brands in particular that have grown to 50 to 100 mil run rate in their second year.
Crazy.
The volume of creative that they're doing is mental to me. How do you stop that volume turning into like chaos in the ad account? I appreciate that this is like relatively tactical rather than kind of a bit more strategic, but naming conventions, like structure of ad account, what does that look like?
Yeah, very good question. This is where a lot of people mess it up because they they miss, like, let's say, for again, this is quite technical, but in Meta, you've got something called a CBO and an ABO. CBO is you give Facebook your budget and it will decide what ads to spend to. ABO is you're like, I have 100 ads, I want to specifically spend X amount per ad. A problem that I found is when brands are testing in ABO, they will either leave an ad running too long when it's not performing, or they won't spend enough on it at all. So, in my opinion, again, there's different ways of doing this. We like to use CBO, which means we have one ad set per concept. And if Meta decides that it gets spent, we kind of determine that as a winner. And again, because what we do is we literally go on the ad set level, last 30 days, sort by amount spent. Usually the top spender is the best performer, and obviously we cross-reference with CPA. And again, because in that naming convention we have, is it whitelisting or not? Is it what creator is it? What's the avatar? What's the angle? Lots of other stuff. We can see from a bird's eye view what's working and what's not, kind of like in a sentiment of what's working in the account. And then we go into the video and we review the hook, review the body. How can we compress it? How can we adjust it? So again, when you're testing in CBO, it's harder to wait, like, be less efficient with your budget, because Meta really is at the point now with AI where the creative is the number one lever, and the quality and volume of creative is going to determine the results of your ad account, and Meta is going to determine what's going to perform or not.
Clear, makes sense. And how do teams, or how do you guys, because I know everyone has different approaches, but how do you guys decide when to iterate a winner versus like when to move on?
Yeah, very, very good question. Because a lot of people, a lot of brands, they don't iterate enough. I would say, like, one thing to take away from this, when you find a winner, especially when it's organic and kind of raw bones, iterate it. So the way we determine whether we should iterate or not is mainly by spend. But every brand has their own KPIs. Usually it's ad spend, because an ad wouldn't get spend if it's not performing well. Another one is CPA, another one is ROAS. And then if you want to go even deeper, let's say, for example, an ad has a lot of spend, but the cost per acquisition is not the best. We know that this ad has some legs. So we look at the secondary metrics. We look at the hook rate, we look at the hold rate, we look at the click-through rate, the watch time. If there is something that is like really off the charts and what compared to average, we try to fix that. For example, if an ad is getting a lot of spend, but the hook rate is like 15%, we know if we can increase that hook rate, the body is somewhat performing and it would increase the results of the ad. So we're like, okay, what other ads have we made, or what other kind of concepts of hook have we made that we can literally just bolt on onto the front of this ad and then bring it back into life. And again, this is where maybe we can get into it later. We take the kind of creator content and launch it as an ad, but also, as you mentioned, Sambhav, we can chop it up and kind of have Lego bricks. So a creator sends us content, we launch that, but we also kind of chop it up, put it into our Google Drive, and now we've got Lego bricks to make more ads. So let's say we've got 200 pieces of B-roll from creators. We've got a great creative strategist who writes great scripts, and we've got an AI voiceover from 11 Labs, and we have an amazing editor. The editor can use the script, use the Lego bricks from the creator, and the AI voiceover, and put it all together, and we've just created another ad. And many, many times, actually, a lot of my creative strategists will tell you this, a lot of our top performing ads they are from AI voiceover plus B-roll, from like content we got from creators. And that is, again, how you increase the volume without having to pay more. Like, we can get content from creators, and now we've made like 5 pieces of content from it, and that is working in alignment with this like economies of scale concept I was talking about. And that's really why you should invest in the engine, because if you're smart enough, you can like literally 5x your output.
Yeah, massive correlation we see across 22 health and wellness brands that we're working with at the moment, in terms of how quickly a brand scales versus how their ability to utilize B-roll in particular. I think like the
Yeah.
majority of brands do a really good job with, like, I'll give them a Google Drive folder full of creator content matching the pain points that we wanted to target. They upload that into the ad account, absolute no-brainer. But I think where a lot of brands slip up is that second lever, which can almost be more important, which is how do we take the 500 pieces of B-roll that we got last month with usage rights and use that within the content to kind of like keep that engine going, even if it's not from, I guess, like ready to go ads, is the way that I phrase it.
I really don't think people like brands understand how important that is, though. That concept of taking B-roll and making ads with AI voiceover, that single-handedly will allow you to like 5x your output, really at a fraction of the cost. The only cost is your editor cost and then the 11 Labs cost, because you've already got that B-roll. Again, like, if you 5 ads versus 100 ads in the ad account, you're going to scale way quicker. So it's like, that is a very important point, and we've scaled a lot of brands by doing that.
And content's expensive, so
Yeah, exactly.
Question for you then, mate. I know that we work across a couple of clients on their like partnership and whitelisting approaches. Let's say we have identified either a winning creator, a winning content, a winning concept. Where does partnership ads and whitelisting actually create leverage versus, like, I know a lot of people hear it as buzzword and they're like, yeah, I just want to do it, but like, where does it
Yeah.
actually create leverage versus a bit of just this is a distraction?
Yeah, very good question, because you're right. Brands come to me, they say, "Oh, I need whitelisting," and then I ask them, like, "What? Why do you think you need that?" And they're like, "Oh, like everyone's saying you should do it. It reduces your NCPA," but no one really understands. So I have like a specific thought process around why I think whitelisting, like every single brand needs to, in my opinion, at least 30% of your ad account spend needs to go towards whitelisting. And the main thing is because it creates like a halo effect. So again, from first principles, like, what is whitelisting? Whitelisting is when you see an ad and instead of it saying AG1, it says Sambhav Chadha. It says the name of the creator. So maybe I'm scrolling on my feed and I see a random creator talking about AG1. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. She's talking about AG1 with all these benefits. You scroll down maybe another 6 reels, you see another creator talking about AG1, talking about a different angle. Next thing you know, you've got 10 creators talking about AG1. People are like, what is this AG1 thing that everyone's talking about? I know this has actually happened to me with AG1. And then the next ad you see is an AG1 ad where the actual Instagram handle is AG1. And people are like, okay, like, what is this? I need to buy this. I'm ready to buy it. They're kind of warmed up. So it creates like this halo effect. And there's a cognitive bias called mere exposure effect, which means it kind of creates the perception that everyone's speaking about your brand. And then when they do actually see a branded ad, people are way more inclined to buy from you because they kind of put you on a pedestal a bit. And from this happening, we've seen new customer cost per acquisition drop by like 30% on average compared to other ads. Literally the same video, one has whitelisting handle, one doesn't. It's a 30% improvement in like CPA efficiency, and it's actually been way more than that in a lot of cases. So what really makes this work though is volume, and that's why I keep mentioning volume is important, because let's say you only see two creators, two ads with creators speaking about it compared to 20, that the mere like halo effect or the mere exposure effect becomes more powerful because you've seen it across more people. And then it really, it kind of, it really creates, as mentioned, this perception that everyone is speaking about the brand, and then it increases that trust factor, because a lot of these organic videos are usually a bit more like authentic, kind of yapping to the camera a little bit. So now the trust is there. They are sold on the outcome. They see everyone talking about it. It's almost a no-brainer for them to buy. That's really the power of it.
100%. I think there's also a subtlety in that conversation in terms of what sort of content does work from a whitelisting perspective, and what doesn't. It's a very quick comment that I made on a client account just last night, where we were running whitelisting ads. They were being edited, and everything was perfect. Like, loved the editing. I thought it was spot on. And then right at the end, it turned into like their branded color screen, and it had their logo in the front because it's a branded ad. And the creative strategist in question, I assume, was coming from that background of creating ads that kind of build a brand a bit more. And turns out they'd made versions with and without, so they were already one step ahead of me there. But the conversation there is the spectrum between organic content and like really raw, authentic content, and how well that performs in whitelisting versus the same asset from a brand account, versus if I create a highly produced shoot ad, that's not going to perform as well whitelisted as it might branded, because no one's believing that this creator has gone and got a massive studio to film this like really raw and authentic video. So just
I was gonna say, no, Karen, sorry.
I was gonna say, just in terms of like balancing where your extra spend goes, because obviously whitelisting rights can cost quite a bit. You definitely want to be pushing spend towards whitelisting rights on the more organic looking stuff than the value in spending an extra 200 or 100 pounds per month on an asset that's like relatively high production and is like relatively professional. For extra whitelisting access might not be as strong for your meta performance.
Yeah, like absolutely spot on there. Like the way you want to think about it is whitelisting is a Trojan horse. Humans hate to be sold to. I think especially in the UK, we're very skeptical people. So either fully commit to being an ad, so be direct response and have a branded Instagram handle, or go the other end, super organic, Trojan horse, like remove the kind of sales resistance from the audience, and subtly have a call to action. Like I would really not recommend any whitelisting ad have a strong CTA or like an end card with a CTA, because then that like reverses the Trojan horse effect. So yeah, I think you're spot on with that.
Clear, makes sense. Question for you, mate. On the just to pivot a bit, because we can't do a webinar without talking about AI. Where are you putting your AI, like putting AI in your current workflow? I know you do a lot of playing around with it, and I know you've kind of essentially the majority of your role nowadays is working out how you can make that workflow either more efficient or more effective. But talk to me about what that's actually looked like. Save us all the hundreds of hours that it's taken you to figure it out.
Yeah, the thing I will say about AI, the way you need to view it is any let's say you have 100 units of energy and you have your zone of genius. Say, for example, creative strategy, it's making ads. Everyone has 100 units of energy a day. You want that team member to be spending every single unit of energy on that thing that's going to move the needle most. What's happening now, though, is there are a lot of monotonous tasks that you don't really need strategic thinking, but you need to do anyway. All those things, let's say it takes you 2 hours a day and 20 units of energy, that can all be automated from AI. And the way that starts is something called a Claude project, where you put all your information about your brand. So now, like AI is already super up to date with everything on your brand. And then the second thing is Claude skills. So in your head, map out the entire workflow and be like, okay, where are the parts of the workflow that I'm doing a monotonous task that I don't need to think and that can be automated? And then literally ask Claude, hey, how do I make this bit into a Claude skill? And it will create the Claude skill, it will upload it into Claude. Now, whenever you need to do this thing, it automatically, Claude kind of taps in. So to give you a very tangible example of how we use this is we write briefs. So and I'm sure on the influence side, you do the same thing. You write a brief. This is what I want to send to the creator, but we actually do this inside of Claude, all the ideation process, and then taking this brief and putting it into Notion or Google Docs where we have to like format it correctly. That takes a long time, and it's kind of monotonous because we've already done the thinking. It's just transferring it. So what we do is literally just tell Claude push to Notion, and it will automatically move the. It's like basically what do we do manually? We've packaged it into an automation that you literally just tell Claude in a simple skill, and it will move it into Notion as a brief, and it will send it over to the creator. So in this influencer process specifically, one thing we're building that is I think is going to be absolutely game changing. Maybe I shouldn't even be saying this, but there's a software called Recharm. We are trying to replace Recharm so that AI can, and this goes on to your point, Sambhav, about getting raw B-roll. So it's all good getting lots of content from the creators and having it in a big Google Drive, but then once it gets really big, it almost becomes obsolete because you can't find all the B-roll. So what we're doing is we're hooking the Google Drive over to Gemini, and it's tagging the videos. So if someone's drinking a drink, AI will tag it as drinking a drink. If it's someone doing a backflip, you tag it as doing a backflip. So now we're building out like a Claude Code app where editors are like backflip, it shows all the B-roll of backflip. And then this is how we connect the influencer side with the editing team to really increase that creative volume. There's obviously a lot of other stuff, but yeah, would be interested to see if like you are using it in any specific way as well.
I think I've, the influencer side of things is really interesting because um, I think us as an industry need to be really careful and like really hesitant with how quickly we implement AI into our processes for what is a very relationship led, very human to human channel. Um, I know that there are tools, softwares, agencies that have gone really hard into that, and my honest opinion is I think they are missing the mark in terms of like a lot of the conversation is that they're replacing the communication with influencers, which is ultimately the relationship building, which is ultimately all influencer marketing is about. And I know I've chatted a lot about relationship building today as well. We are looking at like internal processes. How do we implement AI a bit more for the stuff that is, I guess, a bit more admin-y, but like the number one thing that, to flip your question, the number one thing that we're not handing over is the talking to creators, the asking them how their day was, the learning about what they did on the weekend, how their kids are, because ultimately, even if you want to look at it as in like an incredibly performance-led lens, that is what allows us to get those results. That is
Yeah.
what allows us to get lower rates of creators, to get more revisions, for the whole conversation with them to be a lot smoother, and ultimately for it to be a much better working relationship for both parties. So
Yeah.
yeah, like yeah. I'll flip the question back to you, and I know we're running out of time, but is there anything on your side that you feel brands should like absolutely not hand over to AI?
Very good question. I would say number one is editing. I've seen a few people try to outsource editing to AI, and I would say hiring strategists that are too reliant on AI, where it almost removes their thinking. The best strategists, creative strategists, are the ones that were almost around before AI. They understand the core fundamental principles, and they use AI almost as like a multiplier to make everything better. So really be conscious that it's not kind of replacing your thought process, and it's more so as like a 200 IQ assistant that helps take everything to the next level and speed everything up and remove all the monotonous tasks so that all your 100 units of energy can be focused on the thing that's going to drive the business, the brand, whatever you're working on forward quicker and get better results. And like one thing on your thing, Sam, I think that is very important around keeping the human elements human. So speaking human to human with these creators, don't try to automate that. Sometimes the unscalable things are the most scalable. You're going to get those extra rates from these creators. You're going to get that extra buy-in from the creators. A creator can bounce some ideas around to get better content out. The real leverage is built in these relationships with the creators. So don't try to shortcut that, and instead spend time trying to automate things that don't need a lot of strategic or a lot of thought process. So I think that's a really important point for brands to know.
Yeah, love it. Okay, I think we've hit our AI quota in terms of number of times we can mention it this webinar.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'll move us on to like I know we've got a couple minutes left in the scheduled session, and that I know we have some spare time to answer questions as well. So more than happy for people to stay on, but yeah, I'd love to open the room. From what you've heard today, any questions for Nat or myself, anything paid social, influencer, creative related, we've got the chat open, which Sharif is monitoring and can kind of bring the questions to our attention if we miss them. And then you've equally just raise your hand and you can unmute and ask questions as well. And if we don't get any of that, then I have a question for you.
Yeah. I don't know if we can find any on LinkedIn. I don't know if they can on the
Yes, because I
LinkedIn
know people
session.
are watching on LinkedIn as well. Sharif, if you mind taking a look on LinkedIn and just raise if there's any questions there as well, that would be awesome.
Yeah. In the meantime, maybe one question I have for you is like, where do you find these creators, and like when do you know, like how do you find these creators, and then how do you like initially kind of start the conversation with them?
Yeah, good question. Um, Obviously depends on the campaign, depends on AOV of the product, also makes a massive difference in terms of how you actually build that relationship, or in particular cost of goods of the product. Um, but ultimately, influencer discovery tool, of which there are plenty, and I'm not going to give an unlicensed plug to any of the software companies out here, but set in your like quantitative filters, your audience demographics, the keywords that they talk about, and then you want to be looking on a more manual level at the content that they're creating, the stories that they've posted, the comments on underneath their posts, to ideally identify creators where the product would naturally fit within their lives, because ultimately we're always indexing for authenticity, and that's what's going to make it most authentic. Then for like lower AOV products, we do a lot of seeding and gifting, really to build those relationships. That is offering products no strings attached, asking them like just to try the product and get back to us with feedback. Higher AOV products, that's often not the most cost efficient route because you're spending so much in actually sending out the product. And so there it's a bit more just in the messaging that you use in that initial email or that initial Instagram reach out. If it's a higher value creator, you might still go down that like seeding or gifting route, or you might go down a like small paid or hybrid deal test to actually trial out that creator in the first place. So you might jump straight into that paid piece, but with, I guess, a bit more vetting, a bit more granular breakdown versus your seeding and gifting approach. Looking at seeding a minimum of 100 influencers per month, on average our clients are looking at
Mm.
300 to 400 per month.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I always wondered around the AOV, how that changes from like a brand that their product, their cogs are like £50 compared to like £20 or £10. I saw that. I think Rashika put her hand up.
Yeah, and then
Don't
we've
know if
got a
she's
bunch
still
of
here.
questions in the chat as well. So, um, yeah, Rishika, if you want to kick off with the first question.
I don't even think where she is.
I'm
Can you
here.
hear?
I'm here. Am I audible?
There you
Hi, Sambhav. Hi, Nativ. Okay, so my question was, there are agencies, who say that they are pushing 900 creatives a day. So honestly, I don't know. I know the AI stuff, but I'm not much into it. But I was like, what's your take on that?
What, 900 creatives a day, you said?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they claim on LinkedIn.
Yeah, like,
Be across
I don't know if you
multiple,
want to take.
be across multiple ads though, Nat, right?
Yeah, but I
So
still don't think that's realistic. Like, no one's maybe an agency's saying this, but like 900 new creatives a day, like I've never really heard that. And if they are doing that, they're probably spending like millions a day, I would say. Or maybe not a day, but uh, I would say like realistically, you don't need that much. You don't need 900 a day. Like if you times that by 30, that's a month. That's You don't need that much. You, in my opinion, go a bit less than that. Have volume, maybe I don't know, 10 a day, 5 a day, that are much more curated, high level thinking in alignment with Andromeda than just pumping out a lot of volume. Because a lot of the time, when you over index on that much volume, you're gonna kind of compromise on quality as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Okay, maybe that's just a LinkedIn stuff. Okay,
I did,
thanks.
Yeah.
an additional thing to think about, just in terms of like actually breaking down exactly how many ads you need. Take how much your average winning ad spends. Take your hit rate. You'll be able to
Mm.
calculate then, I guess, like how much you can spend on winners across a month, and then you can then use your hit rate to calculate how many ads you actually need to create. So like, I'm just going to use really easy numbers here, but let's say you can spend 1 grand per winning ad, but you have a budget of, let's say, 10 grand, then you can only scale 10 winners on a monthly basis. If there's a 10% hit rate on your ads, then you need 100 creatives for the month to be able to hit the spend that you want.
Mm.
Awesome. We've got a question from Kier and a question from Isla. Um, Isla, will hit yours first. What key advice would you give to brands who've explored this on a non-budget, very small scale when it comes to affiliate slash influence marketing and aiming to scale once budget allows? Yeah, good question. I think I think for me, it is just understanding where this piece actually fits in your funnel. I have a lot of brands that are slightly smaller that I consult for, which where we don't work in a full service capacity. And the uncomfortable conversation I always have to have is like, this is not going to be a big revenue driver for you if you don't currently have an organic social presence that's relatively sizable. You don't currently have brand awareness. You're maybe not in retail, so you don't have that kind of like mass market awareness either. And so you're probably wanting to make that piece just like a really cost effective awareness layer, and then also that creative space. If it's creatives, then while I've talked a lot about scale and that's talked a lot about volume over the course of this session, there is a lot to be said for in your initial trial run going as small as possible with like as few quality creators as possible, not because it's going to give you best performance, but just so that you can understand what that process looks like as granularly as you can, and only then scaling out. Because the biggest risk is scaling too early without understanding really granularly how that process works, and then that costing you a lot in essentially bad decisions and mistakes on that side. So hopefully that answers your question there. Nat, anything to add on your side, or
No, I think you're spot on. I think that's more your wheelhouse. So yeah.
sweet? Um, Kier, we've got what's your biggest own goal or slip up in your work, and what did it teach you? Nat.
Around this, I can imagine, yeah, around this topic. It's a very good question. Let me have a think. I would say in the earlier days of I tried to rely on it too much in terms of actual output and strategy. So again, writing briefs for me, removing my thought process, removing my kind of latent knowledge on the subject, and not giving the AI enough context. Because if you think about it, as a strategist, you are looking at so many kind of data points. You're looking at the ads manager, you're looking at the competitor landscape, you're understanding your ingredients, your unique mechanisms. If AI only has, let's say, understands your ingredients, it's missing all the other bits of context, and it's going to just increase like AI slop. So again, the way you should think about AI, it's a 200 IQ assistant, not a replacement of you. So my biggest slip up was just letting it do all the work, and we've obviously learned from that and figured out how to systemize it.
Now we've definitely hit our AI quota. Um, on my side, I think two big mistakes, both ends of the spectrum. It's all about briefing. Like we've gone both
Yeah,
ends of the spectrum in terms of too loose, sending out products to creators and just expecting like we're gonna get content to perform straight away. That isn't the case. It's not gonna happen. Equally, we've gone down the like harsh scripting route, or even not even scripting, but just like really tight brief route. Also, just doesn't work at scale. Yes, can work for like getting a particular variation on a winning ad, but ultimately we want creator content at scale to unlock new winning ad angles and new areas to scale and more incremental reach more than anything. So it's just been about finding that balance over I think like first half 2025 was a lot of that for us in terms of, especially with whitelisting and partnership ads, where we go on that spectrum in terms of the briefing and how tight we go. The answer is like it depends per brand, but give them the product information, give them everything they need, make it conversational so that you can ask them, hey, how do you see this playing out? And then give them a couple of different angles that they can choose from. Once they've picked that, only then are you creating kind of what is still a relatively light brief. And you want to structure that conversation as, we know what's working in the ad account, you know what you want to talk about, let's mesh it together and create a winner. If we create a winner, we'll continue working with you. Sweet.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I was saying a quick question on that. Do your briefs stay the same throughout the whole funnel in terms of like, do you give the same, do you even give briefs to seeding? And then the affiliate brief, is that the same as the third tier briefs?
Yeah, good question. So no briefs in seeding at all. In fact, it's like high
Just
level.
send the product.
Yeah, high level product information, usually in as least pushy a way as possible as well. So like instead of sending them out an email with all the details, an insert in the packaging works a lot better, or a QR code video to one of the members of the team explaining
Yeah,
a bit more about the product. Essentially try and like educate them as if they are a customer, so that they then relay that information out to their audience in an unprompted and natural way.
yeah,
When it
smart.
comes to affiliate, they get a bit more information in their like onboarding emails, but again, there's no briefs until you layer on maybe like monthly challenges or monthly competitions, which are working incredibly well for us from like an organic content creation play. That's the content for us that is sitting in between briefed, ready to go in the ad account, and like relatively raw. And then, yeah, for our like low cost retainers or what we'll call a VIP program, that's a bit more similar to the briefs that you're sending out to your creators. So yeah, that's a bit more briefed, and it's still light briefing, but there's a very clear ask, and we typically ask for revisions as well.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. So there's no point where you're really like giving them word by word scripts. It's all just like, and that is derived from the quality of the creators you choose, right?
Yeah,
You
and
know
and
their
it's
content.
understanding where we fit
Yeah,
in their funnel in our client's funnel as well, right? It's giving a creator a script. I'm not saying doesn't work, because I also know that you do a lot of it for especially bottom of funnel ads and iterating on
yeah,
winners. But ultimately, I would rather take 10 big swings at trying to find a new winning angle because a creator has had an experience that we haven't thought of before and that's turned into a winning concept, than take 3 big swings and hit with a like or 3 smaller swings and hit with like a variation on a winning ad. I think there's a place for both. You absolutely need that optimization layer, but the creator diversity that we have ingrained in our programs is definitely more it's definitely more productive to direct that towards new creative angles and
Yeah.
new creative concepts.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool.
Awesome. Sharif, did you manage to pick out if there was any questions on LinkedIn?
Let's see.
Oh, one sec. I think I muted you, mate. Sorry.
No, sorry, there's none there.
Alright, cool. Alright, cool. Well, if anyone has any further questions, like, feel free to ping both me and Nat. As you can tell from the fact that we've gone 12 minutes over, we will talk about this stuff day in, day out, and happily yap to you for hours about it. So send us a message on LinkedIn. I know Sharif's put in our information into the studio chat as well. Feel free to send any emails across and we'll get them answered. But otherwise, like, I appreciate you guys joining the session. We're going to run these pretty regularly at Augmentum, and Nat, I'm sure you're going to do more and more of them with different partners. So keep your eyes peeled, and we'll continue to try and make them as valuable as possible.
Yeah, appreciate everyone joining.
Appreciate it, guys. Bye.
Cheers. See you.